Are you trying to figure out the secret to happiness? Well, here at What Makes You Happy with Jake Pearson, we want to make that happiness more accessible for you in your life. So stick around as we interview everyday people, inspirational leaders, and your favorite celebrities on what makes them happy. Welcome back to the podcast where we ask the one question, what makes you happy? My name is Jake Pearson, and today we have with us Sam Blacker, who is a podcast producer, which is fitting because we're on a podcast. Sam, how are you?
I am fantastic. Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on the show. Where are you coming from today?
I just moved to Newcastle December last year, so I'm in Newcastle at the moment, but I've moved I was literally up in North Queensland and Mackay for a few years before here, so I move around a bit.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for joining us today on What Makes You Happy. And what makes you happy?
Podcasting. And I know that seems like a little like, oh, we're on a podcast. And I'm just going to say that podcasting makes me happy. Like, it seems like the easy answer, but it's literally everything I do. It's what I used to be in radio before this, and it was, things weren't great. Radio's dying as an industry. That's my opinion. But anyway, it was my escape. It was when I had some dark times in radio. It was a creative outlet that helped me revamp and rechange things up. It's just made me happy. I talk to people about podcasting and I have to check myself because I'm like, I'm sorry, I've talked for an hour. Like, I could just keep going forever and ever and ever. I think even before we started recording, mate, I was just talking random things about tech and stuff, and if we hadn't checked ourselves, I feel like I could have kept talking to you even then before we started recording for an hour.
But that's great, and it just shows that what tech and podcasting means to you, and that's what I want to know. What does podcasting mean to you that makes you so happy in your life?
I love it for a few. I mean, it makes me happy for a few reasons. One, as a content creator, I love just how broad it is. Like I believe it's truly the most easily accessible content form that also has the greatest breadth for what it can cover. And I tell so many of my clients, there's an audience for everything. And it's true. There is. And in so many different ways, there's an audience for a finance podcast that goes for 10 minutes. There's an audience for a finance podcast that goes for an hour and a half. There's an audience for a podcast that's 4 hours of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. There's everything. And I love it. It's so cool. So I think I was saying there was 2 points. So for that, but then also I just love just that you can make it whatever you want it to be, I guess, which is the same point I was making. I don't really know what my second point was.
You have sort of that control, to do what you want with it.
And as someone who worked in commercial radio, who was very used to having daily air checks where your boss was like, not that, do that, to be able to sort of come in and be like, just have a crack, let's do it, is a lot of fun.
So you, the listener, maybe are sort of sitting here wondering, well, how does podcasting and all of this tie into me being happy? Well, Sam, what advice would you give for someone from what you've learned in your life who is struggling to find happiness?
I think the thing that I learned from podcasting and why it makes me happy, and I reckon how other people can apply it, is that I had some times where I was feeling pretty trapped in radio. I'd spent 5-6 years working at this career, and I didn't have other skill sets that I thought I had. I was like, radio's it, and I'm seeing a lot of walls coming up, a lot of things, and I was, getting sidelined and stuff. I had I had someone in the industry. I'd just been sort of downsized in a job, so I turned to this other guy and I said, what can I do? And he said, oh, well, some people just don't have that X factor. And I was like, oh, that's like people, the industry was being toxic, everyone was being difficult, and I was finding myself so fixated on that. What podcasting provided for me was an outlet to create separate from that. And just the moment I was able to creatively remove myself from that space, even though I was still doing it for work, but just find a new space to put myself in, it made me happier. It changed my outlook. It gave me things to look forward to, other things to focus on other than just the dark stuff to focus on. So for me, podcasting just represents that I had that ability and I had that force of mind to make a shift, and that brought happiness for me.
I love that, giving yourself an opportunity to put yourself in a different space and have that creative control. Sam, that is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us on the What Makes You Happy podcast. And you, the listener, can go and connect with Sam by checking out the episode description below. So Sam, once again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast to share what makes you happy.
Thanks. Podcasting makes me happy, so even 5 minutes of this made me happy. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. We hope it gives you something to think about on your quest to discover what makes you happy. Don't forget to leave a review or a comment and follow us on all our social media platforms so you can see our upcoming guest calendar. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.